How's it going, guys? Today we're going to talk about pesticides. So we're going to go over organic versus synthetic, and then also a few other options that you have to control some pests in your garden. Can you do something about that duck? So I have my computer with me. I want to make sure that I give as much of the correct information on this as possible. You will see that if I'm going to use a pesticide on the property, I'm going to use mostly organic. I have a bottle here of synthetic. I actually just picked this up, and let's talk about it. There is a lot of controversy in talking about organic pesticide versus using a synthetic pesticide. So I want to kind of clear up some of the air on that. So regardless whether it's organic or not, it is still a pesticide. Synthetic just means that it was man-made, and organic just means that it is a chemical or whatever. It's just a chemical found in nature. And so they've been able to extract that. There's 3 different levels of toxicities on your pesticide. You are going to see either this one right here that says caution. You're either going to see that one, you're going to see warning, or you're going to see danger. So those are the 3 different levels of toxicity for your pesticide. This is the most mild, caution. It is slightly toxic to non-toxic. There's warning, which is mildly toxic, and then there's dangerous, poisonous. So going over organic pesticides, it's something that is found naturally in nature, whether it be from a plant, a mineral, or an animal. And it's something that typically breaks down pretty quickly in nature. So whether that's from the weather or from bacteria in the soil, it just breaks down a lot faster. 2 of them that I use very often are neem oil and diatomaceous earth. It is it's fossilized water, microbes or something like that. And neem oil is extracted from a tree. So they're 2 very different things, but they're both from nature, and neem oil in high amounts can be extremely toxic. And then for synthetic, let me read you this. It says, the USDA defines synthetic as a substance that is formulated or manufactured by a chemical process or by the process that chemically changes a substance extracted from natural occurring plants or animals. So the point trying to make there is that organic doesn't mean that it's safe, and synthetic doesn't mean that it's super poisonous. So you kind of have to figure out what you want to go, which route, and how to appropriately use whatever pesticide that you're using. Because like I said, a pesticide is a pesticide, organic or synthetic. They're both pesticides. So let's go over some of the advantages and disadvantages of synthetic pesticide and organic pesticide. We'll start with synthetic pesticide first, and one downfall to synthetic is that it doesn't break down very fast. You might see that as a positive, but it's not going to break down very fast, and it's going to leach down into your soils. So when you're using synthetics, you really want to make sure that you're staying away from waterways, drainage ways, drinking water to animals. So you have to be pretty cautious about those things. When using a synthetic, it's usually a broad spectrum, meaning that it's going to harm multiple insects or animals that you're going after. So this one, it says right here, kills 100+ insects on contact. So that is so much more than neem oil, which only goes after a few select animals or a few select insects, mites, aphids, and a few other little things like that. Whereas this guy is ready to just take out whatever it comes in contact with. So that's also another downside of synthetic. When you're going the organic route, you need to have a more understanding of what the pest is that you're going after and what you need to do to control it. This is more for somebody who doesn't really have an idea of what they're going after, but they know that they've got something. And that's also part of the problem, is the people, usually if you don't know what you're going after, it's you just haven't been quite educated to figure out the signs of what that pest is that you're going after. And then you're using something like this, and you might not be quite as educated on when to use your pesticide. So that's another thing about any of these pesticides, is that you need to make sure that you're spraying at the correct time. Spraying, like right now, the sun is about to go down. All the pollinators are back home, the bees, the butterflies, they're hiding for the night. So you can make sure that you're not spraying any of those. And you also want to make sure that there's no wind when you're spraying. You can see that it's a still day. You can see I've got a bird feeder right there. It's not even moving. There's zero breeze. So this right now for me is the ideal time if I'm going to be using any pesticide, especially a synthetic though. There's no wind. There's no chance of pesticide traveling down the way. It's going to stay concentrated right where I want it to go. And it's not going to kill the honeybees that are flying around during the middle of the day. So making sure, end of the day, no wind. Another reason that a lot of people use synthetics versus organics is because of how persistent that synthetic is compared to organic. The synthetic will last quite a bit longer for the potency to be able to kill the insects that you're trying to get rid of, whereas the organic might not last nearly as long. They're not as potent. Most organic pesticides, they don't quite go after so many insects that are in their adult stage. They tend to like really be able to attack the young larva stage or the like brand new young aphids that are born like immediately. They do a really good job going after that as an organic pesticide, but they don't go after the adults so well. Whereas the synthetic ones, that'll just kill anything. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter young, old, it's gonna take it out. So really it's not that all synthetics are bad or that all organic pesticides are good. It's just figuring out what is right for you and making sure that you're using it appropriately. Both synthetic and organic need to be sprayed at nighttime. They need to be sprayed when there's zero wind. You also want to make sure that you're applying them when it's not a torrential downpour of rain. And you also need to really make sure that you're reading all of this information that's on the back of all of these. All of this information is here for you, for your benefit. Like I said, you know, the caution label versus the danger label, you need to know the difference between those. Even on here, it talks about making sure that you're spraying your stuff at nighttime so that way you're not harming the honeybees. And you also need to check for if you're spraying anything that's around a vegetable, which we try to steer away from spraying any type of pesticide, whether it's organic or not, near the vegetable garden. I did this year just on my artichokes because I really wanted artichokes this year. And so I used neem oil because it's just neem from a tree. It's the neem oil from a tree and it's an organic one. And I trusted about eating that. If any of it was still there, I mean, the plant's gonna suck it up versus a synthetic one of a chemical that I don't even know how to pronounce. So you have to figure out, you know, what is the best option for you. As long as you're being responsible with it, I don't see a problem with using synthetic. But there are so many more steps that you can take before you even decide to use any pesticide at all. Number one is just trying to see if you can smush the bugs and get on top of it that way. I've been coming out here nonstop and I've been smushing the aphids that we have on all of our roses with my fingers. It's kind of gross at first, but it actually becomes really satisfying to kill them because you know that they're dying and you don't have to deal with it anymore. So I come out here morning, I smush a few of them, and then I come back out in the evening and I smush a few more, and I do it to all of the plants that I've noticed it on, which is mostly our roses this year. And the main reason that I picked up a synthetic this year, which this is my first time using a synthetic, there's mosquitoes. This is the first time I'm using a synthetic in the garden, and the reason that I'm doing it, the reason that I'm doing it outweighed the cons of using a synthetic for me rather than not using anything at all and trying to just stay on this. So the plants that I'm trying to really save this year that I'll be using a synthetic on are some of my David Austin roses. And I worked really hard to be able to buy those roses for myself. So instead of risking losing them and taking it very slow, I plan to this evening use this one. This is the Rose and Flower Insect Killer. And I sat in Home Depot for probably 15-20 minutes reading labels of every single pesticide that I saw over there to figure out which one was going to go after what I'm trying to kill and also was maybe not quite as intense or terrible. So Where I'm spraying this is not near any waterways, and I'm gonna spray it this evening while it's getting dark. You can already see the shadows are getting longer, and there's zero wind. So this is ideal time to be using something like this. This one specifically goes after aphids, Japanese beetles, leaf miners, white flies, thrips, scales, and a few other things. But if you still don't want to go the route of using a pesticide and you feel like you can stay on top of it with smushing the bugs with your hand or using a hose to spray them off, I did that a bunch this year already. We're already infested with aphids on our property. And so I'm tired of smushing and I'm tired of using the hose. And I've also tried some neem oil, but like I said, I try to stay away from that. They say to apply it every 7 days for a massive infestation, and I just feel like that's not quite keeping up on it between myself and that, so gotta step it up. And now we're going, my absolute last resort is a synthetic. If I had the time and all the money in the world, you can also buy beneficial insects and you can release those. That's another alternative to not using pesticides. So there are all kinds of things. There are beneficial nematodes, there are beneficial mites, there are ladybugs, there are praying mantises, and all of those go after a whole array of things. And if I had all the time and the money in the world, I would probably go buy those, but beneficial insects are pretty expensive for the size of our property and how many we would need and the different types that we would also need. So I tried smushing them by hand, I tried spraying them with the water, and I've been going at this for about 2, maybe 3 weeks now, and I'm still seeing the population continue to grow and grow and grow on our property. So then I sprayed the neem oil, that didn't work, so next step now is just synthetic for us. So if you're gonna be using pesticide in the garden this year, I'm gonna highly recommend that you try at first to get on top of it with smushing them or using water to spray them off. Then if you're able to, maybe look into using beneficial insects to see if that can help take care of the problem. And then third, resort to using a pesticide, like an organic one maybe to start with. Try and identify the pests that are in your garden before you move to the next step of a synthetic pesticide. So there's so many other options that you have before you have to just reach for that synthetic. I know that they're cheap. I think this was like $4. So it's real easy to just grab that and be like, yep, I can take care of the problem, bam, just like that. But you also need to think about, okay, so what else is this gonna do to the rest of the garden? Am I totally against synthetic? Absolutely not. I think that they have a time and a place, and once you've exceeded all other options, then jump to that synthetic. Go for it. I don't want to lose my David Austin roses this year, and it's just not worth that risk, especially when all 5 of my David Austin roses are covered in aphids. Will I be using the synthetic on a few other things? No, probably not. If they were on something like a snapdragon or a dusty miller or I don't even know, a zinnia, I would leave them. I would let, you know what, aphids, you can have it, go for it. So figuring out, you know, also maybe can you live with them being on that plant, you know, contribute to that ecosystem a little, bring some beneficial insects in naturally, they'll find their way, maybe hopefully take care of some of those aphid problems that you got going on. If it was on one of those plants, sure, I'd let them take it in a heartbeat, but I don't want them to take my David Austin roses. So, you know, you gotta just really sit down and think before you just grab any type of pesticide, synthetic or organic, which way are you gonna go? Picking the right time to use them is super important. How you're using them is super important, and where you're using them is super important, whether it's organic or not. You just have to think, you know, what's best for your situation. Do you need something that's just gonna take over a whole bunch of different things? Are you going after one very specific pest in the garden? It's really down to doing your research of what you're after, and if the pros of using a pesticide in general outweigh the cons of not using it. So do your research on what you're using and how you're going to be using it. Really try to think the steps through. Don't just go buy anything because you saw a few spots on some plants. One downfall, though, to using an organic pesticide is also the cost and the time it's going to take to get the problem under control. They're usually less potent, so I tend to buy them in bottles like this. This is a concentrate, So it is super strong. Another thing to talk about too is shelf life of pesticides. So this is called ready to use, RTU. It comes in a spray bottle just like this, and the shelf life on this is so much longer than a ready to use organic. So I have some that are in a spray bottle just like this, but I tend to pick up most of my pesticides that are organic in bottles like this. This is a concentrate, meaning that it comes in a comes in a not diluted form at all. It is very, very, very strong. So I pick this up, that way I can mix it when I need it mixed, and I can mix exactly how much I need. Because if you're not going to end up using all of what you mixed together in a matter of a couple days, then you actually need to dispose of it, and you need to dispose of it the proper way. And it talks about what you need to do on each of your bottle. There should be information inside of how they want you to dispose of it. Sometimes you need to actually call your waste company and see if they'll even take it and how they want you to dispose of it. So read on that before you just start throwing things away. So I buy it in concentrate because I can control how much I need, whereas the ready to use stuff of the synthetic fertilizers, that comes pre-mixed and it has a very long shelf life. So I can use a little bit of this and it can sit in there for a year easily. Most synthetic fertilizers have about 2-year shelf life, as long as they're stored properly. So if you're storing them in an area that gets too hot, that's going to greatly reduce it. And also, if you're storing it in an area that gets too cold, that's also going to greatly reduce it. If it's being stored somewhere where it's getting direct light, that's also going to reduce the life of it. So making sure that you're storing any of these properly is very, very important. But like I said, synthetics usually have about a 2-year. This maybe 8 months to a year at most, I would assume. So make sure you store these properly, and that's also why I buy it cold pressed or in concentrate. I can control how much I'm using. But when you do mix this, like I said, you want to use it. Oh, mosquitoes. When you do buy this, you do want to mix it and use all of it. You don't want to just let it sit in the garage for a month or two. Synthetics are definitely not something to be scared of, and I also think as long as people are using them in the correct way, then they can totally be helpful. But people also need to realize that organic doesn't just mean use whenever, however, and whatever. As long as people start to realize that both of these are pesticide and that they both have a time and a place, and are using them appropriately, then I don't think that it's a problem either way. I do think that there are also steps that you should take before you even get to using any pesticide, whether organic or synthetic. So I hope that that cleared up something for somebody out there, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.